I want you all to know that I don't actually pick our Bible readings that we read each day in church, that they're assigned to us by something called the Revised Common Lectionary. And I got to tell you the truth, I have a bone to pick with the Revised Common Lectionary, because if it were up to me, I would not have assigned on Father's Day a reading that ends on the ominous passage of father will betray his child and child his father. But I have no power over these things. Yeah. But I have no power over these things. But I will be preaching from our gospel lesson because I do think it has a lot of good things to say to us today. And so if you get nothing else from this sermon, please get this. Jesus promises to give it all to us, but that also means we are called into danger. It's kind of an odd reading if you think about it, given where we've been in church lately. We had the joy of Easter, and then we had the chaos of Pentecost. And I mean this in a good way, but we had the dogma of Trinity Sunday. And now, not long after all those days, we're caught on this rather odd passage about Jesus sending out his 12 disciples. And this reading comes to us in two parts. The first part is that Jesus promises to give it all to us. He promises to give us all the grace, all the forgiveness, all the love, all the healing, all the resurrection. It's all given, and it's given freely, and it says that Jesus has compassion on us. Yet the second part is also that Jesus calls us into danger. Having given us all these things, he calls us to go out into the world where there is real threat and there is real danger. And worse yet, to go out into that danger to what us seems like being unprepared. And I wish to talk about both those things today. So the first part is that Jesus promises to give it all. The reading opens up and it says Jesus went to all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the good news, curing every disease and every sickness. When he gives authority to the disciples, he tells them, go nowhere among the Gentiles, cure the sick, raise the dead, cleanse the lepers, cast out demons. Boy, if that doesn't sound like a hard checklist, I don't know what does. Jesus promises these wonderful, expansive promises, these wonderful things. The dead are raised, the sick are cured. Welcome every sinner. Invite everybody into community who feels isolated. The lame will walk, the dead will be raised. Every shame will be brought out into the light and healed, and every guilt will be brought out into the light and forgiven. It is wonderful news. Better yet, Jesus looks upon all of us, and he looks upon us and has compassion on us because we are harassed and helpless. What blessed news that the Bible knows we are harassed and helpless. Even better news is that it's not just reserved for times in the Bible. It's not just this story we tell ourselves. It's not just something that happened way back then, but it's true for us now. So if you've ever wondered why that person over there, yes, that person, is being welcomed, well, maybe you're seeing Jesus' work. And if you've ever wondered why that person, yes, that person over there, is being forgiven, well, maybe that's Jesus' work you're seeing. And if you've ever wondered how that person is making it through, given the crushing load that they have, well, maybe you're seeing Jesus' work. Best of all, it is not just true for that person over there, but it's true for all of you. Jesus comes to all of you in all of your sickness and in all of your depression and in all of your anxiety. He comes to you and heals you of every disease and cures you of every sickness and forgives every sin and makes whole every shame again. Better yet, Jesus comes to you and he knows that you are harassed and helpless. It's all summed up by what the Gospel of Matthew says Jesus' primary title is. Jesus' primary title is Emmanuel, God with us. That what defines God in Jesus Christ is that God is with us no matter what. God is with us in all of our helplessness and in all the ways we are harassed. It is good news. But we can't just end there because the story doesn't end there. Where the story ends is this second part, which is that Jesus calls us into danger. Some people like the word risk because that sounds a bit more like a financial term and that kind of makes us feel a little bit better about it. But let's be clear, it's danger. Sheep amongst wolves, says Jesus. My previous church, I had an honest-to-God shepherd. She had 1,000 head of sheep, and every Sunday we had the sheep amongst wolves reading. She would always go, "You know, Pastor, sheep get eaten amongst those wolves." Yes, Cynthia, that's the point. It's danger that we are called into, and worse yet, it's danger that Jesus calls his disciples into that they feel unprepared for, right? Because look at what they're not supposed to take. Take no gold or silver or copper in your belts, no bag for your journey, not even a spare change of clothes. No multiple sets of shoes, no staff. Don't take any of it. Go out into this danger virtually unprepared, says Jesus. And go out into this danger and be prepared to proclaim peace. That's the most radical part of it all. Be prepared to say to every house you meet, peace. If they don't receive it, that's on them, says Jesus. Don't worry about it. Just move on to the next house. I'm sending you out like sheep in the midst of wolves. Now, Jesus does warn his disciples that they're supposed to be wise. Be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. The trick is we as human beings like to reverse that. Often we're wise as doves and innocent as serpents. Jesus does call us to use wisdom in this world, but all the same, he calls us out into a dangerous world and calls us out unprepared and says, your sole job is to proclaim the gospel. To go out to every one of those lost sheep, to go out to every one of those people you know is harassed and helpless, and to proclaim peace to them, and you are to proclaim peace amidst every risk. So the only question for us today then is, what danger is Jesus calling us to? What danger is Jesus calling us to? As was true for the disciples, it is true for us. Jesus sends us out into the world. We can't just camp out in the sanctuary. Sorry, I'll turn off the lights on you at some point. And as was true for the disciples and true for the people in Jesus' day is true for us. Jesus gives it all to us: healing and life and forgiveness, wholeness from shame. The lame will walk, the dead will be raised. The tax collectors are welcomed. Sinners are forgiven. It is wonderful news. And as is true for the disciples, is true for us. We are called out into danger. And so what danger is Jesus calling you out into? Maybe it's the danger of risking actually going to somebody and reconciling with them when you really don't want to, or you're afraid it might not happen. It is a risk. It's a danger. I'll just be honest about that. Or maybe it's the danger of listening to somebody you disagree with, listening to somebody who you don't think is right. Maybe it's that danger of listening. It's a danger, I'll admit it. Maybe it's the danger of going into not so great a neighborhood and risking charity. Maybe it's the danger of going to somebody and trying to help them when maybe they'll respond negatively to that. What danger is Jesus calling you to? I don't have a lot of comfort for you in the midst of that danger. Jesus just warns us it is dangerous, but he does give us 2 bits of advice at the end. The first thing Jesus says is, do not be afraid for what you will say in the midst of that danger. Don't have your speech pre-planned out. This is hard for somebody who writes sermons for a living, right? Don't have your speech pre-planned. Don't practice it in your head. Just trust that God will give you the words. And Jesus does say the Spirit will speak through you. So just trust that. The other thing Jesus says is that those who endure will be saved. Something about enduring danger, Jesus says, that will save us. It will show us our trust. It will build trust in us. And so you don't even necessarily have to succeed. You just have to endure. It's an odd reading for Father's Day, isn't it? It's an odd reading. It's an odd reading where Jesus promises everything to us. Absolutely everything. Healing and life and forgiveness and wholeness. And it's an odd reading because at the same time, Jesus calls us into danger. Amen.